It's 5 a.m., much like it is here right now. You run, put a hot pot of coffee on the stove, get your gym shoes on, your weight training gloves, and your gym bag. As you're walking out the door with your earbuds in, listening to the latest episode of the Science Behind That podcast, you remember that you have to grab your face mask to wear at the gym. So you grab your face mask, you put it on, and as you're standing there in the gym, lifting your weights for your daily exercise, you ask yourself, well, I understand that I have to wear a face mask, but why? And does it actually prevent the spread of COVID? Well, let's talk about that on today's episode of The Science Behind That.
Welcome to The Science Behind That with Atticus Hamilton.
Hello, all you scientists out there, and welcome on back to the Science Behind That podcast. I'm your host, Atticus Hamilton, and before we get started, man, oh man, was that a long break. Like, that was a several-month break. I didn't intend for it to be that long, but really quick before we dive into today's episode, let me just catch all of you guys up to speed on what's been happening. So, I've started classes. I'm now in my senior year of college, which is pretty exciting. Classes have been going as I expected from an 18 credit hour all science course load semester. And of course, for those of you who know me and or have been following my podcast since the very beginning, you will know that I applied to medical school, and a couple months ago, I finally submitted the last application, and so now I'm just awaiting responses back. I already got responses back from 2 schools. I have 3 more left, and we'll see what happens. Additionally, ladies and gentlemen, since our last episode, a lot has changed in this beautiful, wild world that we all call home. Cases of COVID or SARS-CoV-2 have increased dramatically, and at least where I live, here in the United States, the state that I live in, the county that I live in, reinstalled mask mandates, and as always, there have been people who are against that, and of course, there are people who are against getting the vaccine. So for those veteran scientists of this channel, you will know that we have talked about vaccines once before, and we've also talked about specifically the COVID vaccine before. And on today's episode, we're going to be talking about face masks, as you heard from the intro. And I don't know, ladies and gentlemen, I just, I was thinking a lot about this the other day as I was sitting under an elm tree. All the trees here are changing colors, so it's pretty beautiful. But I was thinking about this the other day as I was sitting under an elm tree, and I just thought, that would be an interesting episode because I feel that there's a lot of misinformation out there about what face masks actually do and how they help. So we're going to talk about that in today's episode. One more thing, ladies and gentlemen, before we get started here. If my audio sounds kind of poppy or crackly, I apologize. My old pop filter that I got in my freshman year of college broke, and right now I'm recording this without a pop filter, so don't you worry. I do have a new one coming, a new one on the way, and hopefully that should take care of any popping or crackling. And of course, one final thing to note, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very, very much for all of your support over the past year, I think, almost year, with this podcast. You guys have listened to all my episodes. You've been killing it. We are now over 600 listeners on this podcast. So, there are 600 of you guys out there who like what I do, and I appreciate every single one of you that clicks on this podcast, that listens to it, that shares it with your friends. I I appreciate you guys more than you know. Additionally, as you know, I will never run ads on my podcast. I don't really believe in that. But if you guys want to, within the next coming week, I am in the process of setting up a support the show link. So, if you guys ever want to, support what I do here at the Science Behind That, you will be able to. But ladies and gentlemen, with our growing viewer base, don't you worry, I will never run ads on this show, because I think that there should at least be one place on the internet where you don't get ads every minute. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let us jump right into today's episode. So, masks, I didn't really realize this until, I didn't really realize this until like a month or so ago, but masks are really a controversial subject, not just in the United States, but in a lot of other countries in the world as well. Now, on Spotify alone, the primary viewer base for this podcast are U.S. citizens and Australian citizens, surprisingly. So, hello to all of you Australians out there watching this podcast. And I know that in Australia, there's been a lot of pushback against mask mandates and everything as well. Even in my home country of Sweden, there have been pushbacks against mask mandates as well. Very few, just because Sweden never really mandated mask mandates. But anyway, so are masks actually effective then? And it depends on how, the short answer is it depends on how. Yes, but it depends on how we're determining effectiveness. And let me break it down for you. So if you wear, for example, a surgical mask over your mouth and nose, it's 79% effective in reducing the spread of the virus. And I feel like that's a big issue when we hear about this as normal day-to-day citizens on the media, right? People say it's this percentage effective, but what does that actually mean? What it means is surgical masks, when they cover your mouth and nose, are 79% effective at preventing microscopic droplets of saliva and spit from being ejected from your mouth out into the environment. So why is that important? Well, if you listen to any of my episodes previously about COVID, you will know that is important because COVID is transmitted via aerosols and via droplet transmission. And as a summary, in a very rudimentary sense, a droplet is anything bigger than 5 micrometers in diameter, and an aerosol is any water droplet that is smaller than 5 micrometers in diameter. So that's really, really small. The standard mesh size, for example, on a surgical mask or a cloth mask, like a bandana, because I see a lot of people wearing that, or fishing gaiters, is around 2 microns, a 2 micron gap between the fibers. That's about the size difference or the space in between those fibers. And that's about 79% effective at stopping droplets and aerosols from being expelled from your mouth when you're talking, when you're coughing. Or to put it another way, 79 out of every 100 droplets that you exhale are caught on the mask. And so what does this mean? Well, in a very rough sense, it means that it slows the spread of the virus to other people. And herein lies a massive distinction. Because in my experience, and I'm sure many of you out there will agree with me on this. Very few people actually explain what the difference is between wearing, for example, a surgical mask or like a cloth face mask to wearing something like a KN90 or an N95. The difference is the diameter in between those fibers. And additionally, a lot of those N95 masks, I was thinking KN90s, N95 masks or KN90s or KN100s or PD100 masks, all of those masks, most of them will also have an internal layer of chemicals, basically, like activated carbon to absorb chemical vapors. And what that does is not only does it protect other people from getting sick by you, but it also protects you from being sick by other people who aren't wearing face masks, right? Because if somebody's not wearing a face mask and they have COVID, let's say, and they talk to Jim, and Jim is wearing an N95, 95% of the aerosols produced by the person who's not wearing a mask will be blocked by the N95 respirator that Jim is wearing. But you don't have that same thing occurring with like a surgical mask or a cloth mask, right? It's less than 30% for a cloth mask or a surgical mask. So those masks are not designed to protect you. They're designed to protect other people from you if you are sick, right? So now that we've established this very important distinction here, I'd like to just kind of explain then what is the point of mask mandates, or I guess to put it another way, why do countries want to enforce these mask mandates? Had to take a sip of my coffee there, sorry. Well, the very broad reason is because if you have a population of people and everybody is wearing cloth masks or surgical masks, right? As we've already established, those have around a 79% effectiveness in reducing the aerosolized spread of spit, basically, from your mouth. But if the entirety of the populace are wearing them, the likelihood of, or the ability of a virus to be transmitted from person to person dramatically drops, right? It dramatically drops. So if everybody's wearing them, sick people, healthy people, no one can really spread it. And it's not 100%, obviously. You know, you can still spread it. There's still that, 19% of those droplets do get out of the mask. And so you are able to spread it to an extent, but it's nowhere near as wildfire spread as it would be without the face masks. And so when you're looking at a population of individuals who, in this brief thought experiment, let's say none of them are vaccinated, it's a very effective way of limiting the number of people who get infected with the virus. Now, I'm sure some of you out there are sipping on your cup of coffee. I hope it is a Swedish coffee, because Swedish coffees are fantastic. Like a Gevalia or a Arvid Nordqvist, either one of those, great coffees. Anyway, I'm sure there are some of you out there who are like, well, Atticus, there's a vaccine now, and a lot of people are vaccinated, so why do we still have to wear face masks? And to those of you who are thinking that is a valid question, and I feel like a lot of times we always dismiss those questions because it's like, oh, they're part of this political group or that political group, or that's a stupid question. No, it's a valid question. The answer to that is everybody isn't vaccinated, right? Everybody isn't vaccinated. And I'm not saying everybody has to be vaccinated to make the requirement for a face mask unfeasible, but you need about 88% for this particular virus. For SARS-CoV-2, you need at least 88%, if I remember correctly, of the population fully vaccinated to be able to begin to extinguish this particular pathogen from the population. Because you're right. I mean, if you've been vaccinated, the likelihood that you're going to get sick is therefore really, really, really low. And the likelihood that you're going to get very, very sick if you've been fully vaccinated is around 1% or less. But the reason why a lot of places in the world are still saying, you have to wear a mask even if you've been vaccinated is simply because not everybody has been. Now, I would like to put this one thought-provoking question in the minds of all of you. There are some places in the world that have had a laissez-faire approach to this whole thing, no mask mandates or anything like that, but they have very, very low infection rates, very, very low daily infection rates. Why do you guys think that is? I would love to hear your thoughts. You can always send me an email if you have any questions or suggestions or comments or whatnot about the podcast at thesciencebt@gmail.com. You can send me an email there and just, tell me what you think about this episode. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for listening to this. I hope you enjoyed this. I know this was on a Thursday that I posted this, so it's kind of random that it was on a Thursday, but I wanted to get this out there just to let all of you guys know that I'm still here. I haven't gone anywhere, and there will be another episode on Monday and then next Friday and so on and so forth, and we'll get back onto the normal weekly schedule of new episodes every Monday and Friday. So until then, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for listening to this episode. I hope you guys have a lovely, lovely day, lovely Thursday, and a great weekend. And I will catch you guys all on Monday. Remember, stand up and question everything.